Having a curious outlook on life and trying to understand how things around you work is a very interesting skill that a lot of designers have. This episode today is for you if you've been one of those people who always wants to figure out what else, whether that's extracurriculars in your school or college, or trying to figure out personal projects and build something. And this is also especially for you if you're from mechanical engineering. Welcome to another episode of Design Journeys. In this series, we invite designers that work at some of the best companies and startups in India and abroad. These are products that you've probably heard of. And what we do is get deep into the details of how they got started and get into some of the interesting parts about their design journey. This episode is with Paritosh Kumra. Now, Paritosh was a part of our very first 10K Designers cohort, and since then, he's been a returning mentor. He's worked at a bunch of startups, freelance projects, and he currently works as a product designer at Razorpay. Paritosh got his start as a mechanical engineer in VIT, and in this episode, we dive deep into how he made the transition to product design.
Paritosh, welcome to the show, man.
Hi, how are you, Janil and Abhinav?
Awesome, doing awesome.
By the way, what was your major in college?
So, I'm a mechanical engineer, which is exactly not what I'm doing. Nowhere close. I would say there is a lot in common when it comes to the higher level strategy and competency. But yeah, definitely the education is very different from what I'm currently doing.
What do you think comes closest? Like, what's the most common thing between mechanical and design? Like, because I would assume people would think it's the drawing part, it's the planning part, it's the systems part. But what do you think it is?
So when I was getting into UI UX, I had no idea that this could be something that is my core competency, right? I was all about graphic design and okay, let's just do it for screens. No bars held. Like I did because I saw UI UX projects got paid more. Like I know graphic design. Let me get into UI UX and do the same thing. But after the cohort, I realized there's a lot of critical thinking that goes into why you want to design something, what you want to design, right? And that is very similar. Like, so I call it problem solving. So like, I feel mechanical engineer is literally problem solving. You just don't build stuff for artistic reasons a lot when it comes to these complex machineries, right? So there is a lot of strategy. You have to there's so much you need to worry about while solving or building something. And this is something I did in my college, right? I was part of these technical teams. All we had was a single formula, which we used to use and reverse engineer our remote control aircrafts on. And then we used to go for competitions. So that was the best experience for my college. And now I look back and I realize that is where I built my problem solving capabilities, right? And what you do over there is every 3 years, they'll change the problem statement. They'll change the formula. So that means those 3 years, what you're doing is first year you build something, you figure out, you won, it's fine, you didn't win, you figure out what you have to do next. So there is this process of learning and then unlearning, then going and doing it on the exact same problem statement, right? A new thing, because you obviously want to do better than last time, right? So all these meta things, I didn't realize that I was doing it back then, right? But after getting into the community, the cohort, once I realized, okay, these are some concepts that you live by within life. I was like, damn, that is what maybe shaped me, right? And I actually believed I was a very shy and introverted person. I wasn't super articulated. I wasn't super confident, right? But there, when it came to going into US and creating those design reports, which the directors of Lockheed Martins are going to look at it, right? We're going to give that technical presentation to the director of Lockheed Martin. It wasn't no joke, right? It was serious stuff that really built me, I would say, as a professional, right? That made me, the personality that people see today is very different from what I used to be in school, right? I think that is when it started, when I got the opportunity, when I got the exposure to go out of India and take part in these super technical competitions, right? And it was all about so we talk about documentation, we talk about documenting your design, right? I think all of it started from my college years, the last 2 years in my college. That have been very foundational to whatever I did after college, and that has been foundational to how I realized, okay, 10K designers exist, right? So it's I did some things that led me to the other things and led me to this, right? Eventually. So it's all like I look back and it just makes sense.
One thing I'm curious about is, for example, if you're in mechanical, right, so you'll be exposed to a lot of like mechanical engineering related world stuff, right? But if somebody's in engineering, especially computer science or electrical engineering, they might be exposed a lot to like software programming, design side of things. Right. So do you think that folks who are in mechanical and civil get exposed a lot to the product design side of things, computer science coding side of it, or not that much?
So like nowadays colleges do have this like one common semester that everyone goes through. Like every student does go through that object oriented programming eventually, but I don't think that is enough exposure for people to lead into product design. There is this industrial engineering as a field now that comes very closer to what we actually do as concept, comes closer to what we do in product design as well. But otherwise, I would say it was just my personal curiosity that led me to design, right? That led me to graphic design as such. There was nothing in mechanical that basically said, oh, this is for me, maybe I can pursue more in this. So it's just the right usage of internet, I would say, consuming the right pieces of content, like eventually led me to this. So in college, I used to be a huge Gary Vee fan. I used to listen to him a lot. And that's where this perspective came for, you should diversify your income. You should have side hustles, right? You should learn more skills, more than what that one thing that you work on every day. That led me to web development, actually. Now I'm calling it web development today, but it was like, oh, I want to design websites. And I started learning HTML, CSS, JavaScript. I had no idea that there was this thing called designing before you actually develop these things, right? There was no difference between design and development. I just didn't know it exists. It's like, oh, this website is great. I want to be able to create it. So I started learning that. And then I went back home for my summer vacation. And it's like, I am really into this. I told my father, my father's like, no, you go for a mechanical internship. Like, no, I want to learn this web development or web design thing, right? And like any other Indian parent, he would say, if you want to learn something, maybe do it with a certification. So we joined these classes, and I went there. It's like, I want to learn this web development thing. And when I went there and I realized most of those things that they had in their curriculum, I had already learned on my own, right? This is one thing that I had no idea about, which was Photoshop. This said something like, before actually going and developing these, you need to design these things. So that's what told me, like, oh, there's this tool called Photoshop that exists. So I said, okay, I have already learned a lot about web development, which you're going to teach me over here. So let me just do this specific bit. And they didn't teach me how to design. They taught me the software, basically. And I think that's my first ever interaction on like the graphic design side of things I would say.
But डर नहीं था, fear नहीं था कि I'm the campus placement hai, there's core mechanical jobs, placements happening, and if I don't sit for that, I might miss out on that, and everyone around you is doing that.
Honestly, back then I wasn't a very strategic kid. I used to go with the flow. I had already done this one internship that was required for the credits, right? The next one, the last summer vacation I would ever have was after my third year, right? That one I had no fears. Like, I can go and do whatever I want, right? So I just had some credits to fulfill back when I was in semester, right? I was like, let me just build on these things. So eventually I did end up doing both. I did go with the internship as well that my father was suggesting. And I did the web development and the design thing as well. I couldn't pursue the web development thing because I just broke the flow, and I wasn't a computer geek, right? Anyways, so but that design thing just stuck with me. I went back to college. I went back to my team. I just started doing the posters and banners and t-shirts for them, right? So that thing stuck for some reason. And I would say it wasn't because of design. Like, it was more because I was part of the technical team and I wanted to go to the competition my last year as well. That was a controversial topic at my home. It's like, you should sit for placements. Like, no. I want to go and win that competition. Obviously, we didn't win the competition. We did better than the last year for sure. But I would say, like, what it happened for good, right? I came back home without any jobs, very shamelessly, but took a break. But anyways, I would say that led me to graphic design eventually, because I knew when I had nothing to do, like, this is a skill I've built. Maybe I can try something on my own, right? Mechanical jobs don't work the way conventional design jobs work, right? I would say it's very easy to get a design job. But in mechanical jobs, like, the supply and demand thing is actually messed up, right? You really need to be a very, very, very good, to get a decent job. And on top of that, it's like most of those jobs, you can't just cold outreach or just enter an infrastructure or a factory setup. It's like, I need a job. You need a referral, right? You need contacts. So although I had those things because my father was a mechanical engineer, my grandfather had his own setup, right? But I just didn't want, I wasn't sure. Like I had this commitment issues. Like, I don't know if I want to do this, if I can like spend that blood and sweat in that scorching heat on that workshop floor. So it's like, let me take a break. Let me go back and figure out like what do I have to do? I had no idea. Like I just went back home. As I said, I wasn't a strategic kid. I went with the flow. But obviously there was some pressure at home. So it pushed me to do more on the graphic design side. I tried to set up online shops to sell t-shirts, right? Eventually, again, nothing happened over there, but those things just added up, right? I kept practicing graphic design once and again and again and again. And I graduated in April 2019. It was in December 2019, I figured like, now I need to start earning on my own because there's so much guilt after college. You see all your friends getting placed, you see them working, you see them living on their own. I'm here staying at home, figuring out what I have to do. So like I did two things. I said, I want to move out because there's too much pressure at home, right? Which was, again, I would say that's understandable, right? But I was like, okay, I need to start something, right? So I went to Ghaziabad for this training, which was again something I was super into, right? Industrial automation and robotics, right? And when I was there, I figured like, now I need to start earning, right? I can't wait anymore. So I just go to freelancer.in. I set up an account. I was like, I need to earn the first bucks as fast as possible. So I didn't take the conventional way over there of bidding, making cover letters, bidding on project briefs, right? I was like, freelancer has this really unique thing called contests. I would just go to that contest, read the brief, make whatever they've asked for and submit it. It was like after 1 month of effort, I actually won a contest, and it was like $55 was what I got for the very first. I was very proud. But that was a loophole, I would say.
Nice.
Instead of working on like improving myself, eventually it became, I can earn money so easily. So I kept on working on things that weren't really going to add up to my portfolio, because I had no idea of portfolio. I had no exposure of how design jobs work, right? It was just, okay, I know something on the sites. I think I can make money through this, right? I didn't know the concept of portfolio or proof of work. So I just kept doing really, really lame projects and contests to earn money. And it wasn't until like 3-4 months into it, I realized, oh damn, this is such a waste of time. I'm doing these lame projects. Sometimes I'm winning, sometimes I'm not. The money is not a lot, right? But this is not going to lead me to anywhere, right? These are things I wouldn't proudly show to anyone. So I had to recalibrate at that point. That is where I realized, okay, there are these UI UX projects as well that are there in these contests, but I have no idea how to do them. So I started looking into it. I get this one contest where you have to design this landing page, like super ass long landing page. I had no idea about design. And I start figuring out like, hey, how do I do this web design thing? How do I design these landing pages? I had no idea. I knew a little bit about Webflow. Was like, okay, how do I go and do it? Eventually, I figure out this term called Figma for the very first time. So I started in 2018 with Photoshop. It's 2019, 2020 early. I figured out, okay, there is this tool called Figma जहाँ पे जाके तुम web design कर सकते हो, right? No ideas. Like if I design, it will be developed as well. That is what I thought Figma was initially. So again, because I was coming from this mechanical background, I had no one else doing design around me. So it took me so much effort to build this context and perspectives of what actually goes on inside design. Like YouTube was my first source of knowledge for everything, right? So I do this project and I take so much effort. As that person gives me the award, right? Gives me the award, but doesn't give me the job for some reason. So I was like, this didn't work out well for me. So I go back to again doing some social media stuff and some packaging stuff, right? But that is when COVID happened, lockdown happened. Now this was time I had gotten my internship as well. It was a very nice internship. Usually you don't get these things if you're a mechanical engineer, but I did that industrial automation training. It ended well. I got a really nice internship in Noida, and that's when COVID hit, right? And it's like, this is every Indian teenager's dream, that you just sleep and binge and eat and do nothing. That is what I got to live. I had the privilege. I would say I shouldn't be laughing about it, but I had the privilege to go through that. And what I did was I just doubled down into this freelancing graphic design shit. I did some really nice packaging projects. I did some social media marketing, and eventually I was started another clothing brand, which didn't happen, but there's a lot of exposure. And this was right before Abhinav's cohort was going to start. This is June or July 2020, right? So, like, this is a very fun journey. I wouldn't want to live it again, right?
So let's go here, right? I think what I love about the story so far is you in college you realize, yeah, maybe the learning part of it, the classroom stuff isn't so interesting, but actually designing these remote control cars. And then you have that formula and you can optimize each and every variable, right? So you're designing that. Then you're like, what else can I design? And you kind of get into the graphics, social. And today you're designing payment products for, one of the biggest or the biggest, in fact, if I'm not wrong, payment and fintech products in India, which is Razorpay. So how exactly, what was that part of the journey like? Like, how did that jump happen?
So I would say what happened after my college, it wasn't super smooth. I would say this was also not super smooth. So Abhinav's first masterclass, like his inaugural 10K designers masterclass happened, finished in August 2020, which was a 3-month masterclass, right? And it started with just 30 people and Abhinav and Mayank. That's it. Right now, in just one cohort, we have like 200 people and easily 60 plus mentors. So, like the first ever masterclass for the UI UX cohort ended in August 2020, but Razorpay happened to me in February 2022, right? So it wasn't as smooth, I would say, but I just look back to things. I was still freelancing. My cohort, UI UX cohort, was going on. I got an opportunity. It didn't work out. I took a break in the middle, right? But all those things, I just look back. I was super active in this 10K designer community, obviously, even when I was in break, even when I was doing the freelance thing, even when I was having that job opportunity in 2021, right? But I just look back and all those things, I wasn't basically actively involved in product design. I was giving people feedback. I was talking to people about product, right? I talked a lot about product. I didn't design as much as I've talked about it, but I remember when Razorpay came out with this brief, this open brief, anyone can apply and if they want a job, they can submit that design assignment, right? They came out with this open brief, and I just attempted because Razorpay was like after the first cohort, Razorpay was on my mind because they came up with this capstone in our cohort, and I did that. I thought I did
One
a
of your
good
assignment
job.
projects was Razorpay.
Right. So I did that. I thought I did a good job. That is when I really started understanding what Razorpay was, what Razorpay design was, and I became very fascinated. Like Razorpay, I realized this is one of the best design teams in India. So I always had Razorpay on my mind, even if I didn't have that opportunity. So like fast forward 1.5 years, Razorpay comes out with this open brief. Obviously, I'm at home. I'm figuring out what do I have to do next. I wasn't having any freelance projects or any job. I always wanted to get into Razorpay, and I made it very vocal with people as well. Like this is the only company I would want to get into next. If this doesn't happen, I would probably never. This would never happen again, right? So like, abhi hi hai, otherwise not gonna happen. So I didn't work on product design on that 1 year. Like this was passively giving people feedback or talking or discussing case studies. That's it, right? When I did that design assignment, and I look back at my cohort one ka like assignments, right? I saw this massive improvement. Like I wasn't even working actively in product design; it's mostly graphic stuff or discussions, right? And I saw this whatever I did in this last 1.5 years has been added, and I had no idea, right? I was just doing things because I was given the opportunity to get into further cohorts as an alumni mentor, right? People were coming and asking queries. I was just resolving that. But that built up so much knowledge, right? And I had no idea. It's like all subconsciously happening. And when I do the assignment and I go through the interview rounds, like I say it very bullishly now. Like Razorpay was my target always. That was the only one company I had applied and got in that at one attempt, right? So it wasn't smooth, I would say. But whatever I did in that 1.5 years, that became my differentiator over others, right? And that's why I felt it wasn't as tough to get into Razorpay as it would have been earlier for me.
It's a super motivational story.
Let me tell you something really funny as well. I think a few weeks back, we put out this video around remote lifestyle and everything.
Yes.
And in that, we were just talking. And one example I was saying, I was like, yeah, there is somebody from the cohort who works at Razorpay they do a hybrid thing. They're living at their home. I couldn't remember in the moment, so I was like near Chandigarh. And so, of course, nobody really caught on to that, but all the cohort people, right? I literally got messages saying, oh, I was listening to that and I was like, oh, you're talking about Paritosh.
Yeah. He's playing soccer in the evenings. I remember that, talking about it in that video.
Right. So immediately that internal group, everybody was like, that is Paritosh.
Right. I mean, I talked about this at my company as well. Hey, listen, people are talking about us. So, I mean, people texted me that, hey, Abhinav mentioned you, and I had no idea what it was about. I went to that specific timestamp. I was like, damn, I think I've done something in life now.
Let's talk about that, bro. Let's talk about it. What's life like now at Razorpay? What's the design culture? What's your day-to-day? And of course, we can talk about the remote lifestyle part too, since people found that interesting.
I mean, so one reason that I wanted to get into Razorpay was obviously I had this perception that Razorpay is one of the best teams, and I want to work with, like, you would want to work with the industry's best, right? Anyone would if you give them the option. So, like, I want to get in here, and I understand what my core competency is. I identify myself as a problem solver now, more than just a product designer, right? Because it's like this intuition I've built doing mechanical projects, giving so many, like, talking about product design so much. And I understood, right, when you look at Razorpay's briefs as well, right, you get that what they look for in a product design. And I knew, like, this is what I think I'm good at. This is what Razorpay wants as a product designer. So I think this was a very good match. This is a very strategic reason as well, not just an aspiration. Hey, I want to work with the best designers. This strategy. They want the best competency I think I have, right? So that is the reason I got in. And every day I work is just, I keep getting validation, and this is the right place to be, because I'm doing so much this so critical thinking heavy work, which is what I wanted to do in the first place. It's like, this is the place I will polish it. Right now, I think eventually you learn these skills and you reach a saturation. Like, what else, right? Uske baad, there is just this difficulty of projects that you take up that improve you further, right? And that is exactly what's happening at Razorpay. Even when it comes to fixing a bug, I try to go out of my way and deliver it in a way that no one would have thought, oh, this is something we can do, or this is some way you can hand it off, right? So by that, I'm very happy with the kind of work I'm doing over here. There is a lot of autonomy, right? Like, it just matches so well with my process. I would say they come up with projects. It's like I get to do whatever I want to do with the project. I decide what kind of research I have to do. Obviously, there is a lot of feedback mechanisms ongoing as well, so that everyone makes sure we are on the right track. But it's like this project came up and we literally 5x the scope of it because no one had realized that this could be possible. These are the kind of projects I want to build, right? Which I feel is going to add that proof of work. So I think when it comes to, like, difficulty of projects, the autonomy that you get on how to handle that, I absolutely love it at Razorpay.
Can you give an example of one project that you worked on recently? Because I think people would love to hear that. What exactly does a designer at Razorpay work on?
So I work for the developer experience pod. It's not really directly related to payments, but one thing that people might not know is that Razorpay is an API product, and for a business, for a B2B business to use these APIs, they need developers to come and integrate it, right? So I work on the developer experience pod, and we have these integration guides. So basically, what happens is the developer from that company comes to our documentation. They look at how do you integrate the Razorpay payment gateway, right? They go through the docs, they go through the guides, right? And then they go and figure out and they build it alongside. So we have these integration guides that someone has to follow to be able to integrate the Razorpay payment gateway, right? So currently it exists in the form of a guide. It's literally a doc, right? You read word by word. You understand what the code is about. So I can't get into a lot of details because the project is still in progress, right? But what I feel I'm very proud of what I did over here was this project came into me it was told like, this is like integration guide revamp, right? And after all the research, 1.5 months of building context and research, everyone now doesn't call this an integration guide. They think of this as an integration experience, right? And that is something we figured out, that there is so much possibility that it's not just a manual reading stuff that you do while you're coming and integrating the payment gateway. There's so much to and fro. There is so much communication happening from the developer and the business side as well, from the developer and the Razorpay side as well, right? There's a lot of touch points and a lot of steps that exist. So the depth in which we can go and figure out and merge these things into one single experience that is super streamlined, that we never considered, because it was literally just a word by word doc at this moment, right? And now to build an experience around it, it just doesn't require me to build UX and design.
Yes.
It requires tech bandwidth from developers, right? We can actually get to build technology and innovate on this specific project, which was literally just a guide, just a web guide. It's like HTML and CSS could do that, right? So now there was autonomy for how I approached this project. Obviously, there was a research plan, but my problem solving process led me to, I took in one information, figured that out, moved, validated it, figured another information, used it, and then tried to connect the dots. And I saw there is so much more we could do in this specific project. Again, there is a long way for the project to go. Again, this was supposed to be a web page. Now it's an experience. So it's easily a year-long project, I would say. So I'm like, this is what I want to do. This is where I feel my core competency came in. It's like, it's not just about going into Figma and designing. It's very critical to understand what the user needs, right? And sometimes it's not even what the user needs. When we are coming up with our research user interviews, no one says this is bad, right? But we look at their behavioral insights, right? What they're doing, and it might not be super efficient and they might not be realizing it. So there is that aspirational bit of adding so much delight, and there is this fundamental problem that we can solve with the most basics of things as well, right? So how I approach this project is super critical, because design and development bandwidth is huge in this. So if I say, hey, no, let's just go and build that, is going to cost so much only for us to figure out, oh, this is not the right solution. So that is where scoping came in, and I realized, okay, this is how you scope projects. This is how you proceed one step at a time and figure out and ensure that you're solving the right problem, you're solving it the right way, and then you keep adding to it, right? So I'm super proud of being involved in these kind of projects. Not lie, when I was coming to Razorpay, I wasn't super convinced. What is developer experience? What is documentation? Why do you need product design in that, right? I was like, you look at Stripe, it's already sorted. They made it. Just make that, and you're sorted with your product as well.
Yeah.
You come in and you realize there is so much more to product, to design in general, right? There's a lot of problem solving is my favorite word. If anyone in the community sees this, like I just say, there's so much problems you can solve, which people might not know exist, which your stakeholders might not know exist, right? That's why I'm like super pumped to be like involved in these kind of projects. This is what I wanted to do. That is why I came in, right?
I want to ask one thing here is, there's like 80 plus designers at Razorpay. There's your team. What's it like with everybody else? Like, is everybody else also remote? Like, are most people in the office? What's that like?
So right now, I would say for my specific business, most of the people stay in Bangalore, which is a little bummer, but like most of the people stay in Bangalore, although they've started calling us back in cohorts, right? So they get to hang out with each other all the time, but apart from that, there is a good enough number of designers who stay in Mumbai, Delhi, Pune as well. I think it's a good distribution. It's open to anyone, right? But they've started calling us back. It depends from business unit to business unit, team to team as well, on what is the requirement of the designer on the entire team has to be there. But right now, it's been open to everyone.
And Razorpay in general is a little understanding and supportive of the fact that, we're open to remote as long as it's not a critical thing that you need to be here for.
Business teams were always working from the office. They've started calling us back, but they don't mind making exceptions if there is a genuine use case, right? So I think that is there for sure.
Thank you, Paritosh, so much, man, for coming on the show and just sharing all the wisdom.
Yeah, man, this was a dope conversation. Really cool.
Yeah, I mean, when I look back, like, it's just things subconsciously happen, as I said, right? I never knew when I got into that UIS or beta community that Abhinav was planning on a masterclass.
The Discord Telegram group, basically.
Right. I never knew when Abhinav was planning for a masterclass, I would get in, right? I wasn't in the best of situations back then, right? And I was in constant touch with Abhinav as well. You see that whiteboard over there? That is the first ever UISO design challenge that Abhinav gave. And it still has all those information architecture and all the bullshit I did over there. So I've preserved it as an NFT. Wow. Now the whiteboard is messed up, right? It's never going anywhere. It just tells me where I came from. All these things subconsciously happen, right? Abhinav gave me the opportunity to be an alumni mentor in cohort 2, 3, 4. And as I've said, like, just talking about product made me good at it as well, right? Discussing so much with so many people, it gave me an opportunity to build my credibility, right? Build my visibility as well. All these people जिनके साथ इतना अच्छा relation. So going back from when I said that I had no one around me in design and I had to figure it all out on my own on YouTube, to having like this such close knit group of people जिनके साथ now you share personal achievements, these personal frameworks to get better together. It's like this is a lot of difference, and I don't think my family understands the leverage I have just because of the last 1.5 years wherever I've been involved, right? No one told me to come here. It's just subconsciously we saw each other, we tried things out, and just things kept unraveling. Good things also happen, bad things also happen, but like now it's like it's like the foundation is set. I feel there is no way I go back in life, right? I'm not going to earn lesser. I'm not going to work on a bad culture anymore, right? It's just things are going to go forward now. So that foundation is set. That's maybe that is also a source for my confidence, and maybe that's why I'm able to speak so much openly now, right? So it's like all these things unraveled eventually, and obviously thanks to Abhinav and Mayank from cohort 1, right? Like no one knew this would happen like 2.5 years later. Right?
True.
Awesome.
And bro, like, I mean, one thing I'll definitely also add is your involvement as a mentor within the last 4-5 cohorts has been amazing. Like some of the people that you've helped get a role, help through some of the things that are stopping them, limiting beliefs. It's been very, very useful. So I'm so glad that we've also, been able to create this thing together, which is like a system for also helping the next person out to pay it forward, right? For me also, a lot of the stuff I do is paying it forward, right? I also am from a engineering background kind of thing, had to figure it out, had to struggle. But I'm so glad that now we have this kind of community that's able to do that at such a nice scale.
Yeah, yes. Right, 100%.